Okay, Nick, let's preview a huge game, always a huge game for the US men's national team as they go to Mexico for a friendly, travel to Guadalajara. This is Mauricio Pochettino's first taste of this intense rivalry. I'm sure he's going to love it. He seems like the kind of manager that will really embrace this rivalry. But how important are games like this, Nick, away in Mexico in this kind of environment for this young US team under Pochettino as they build towards the World Cup on home soil in 2026? This feels like it can be a really big experience for them and a big moment in their development under Pochettino.
I think it has to be because there are so few. I know we have Nations League coming up, but before the World Cup, because there's no qualifying issue for the US, Mexico, and Canada, this is going to be, and this game's not going to be quiet. This game is going to be an atmosphere. We get a pretty intense pro-Mexico atmosphere in most of the US's home games. So anytime you get a chance to play them south of the border, it is very important. And whether Mauricio Pochettino wants to or not, these are the games and experiences. I know he expects this is going to get a little crazy, but I don't think most people appreciate how fervent, how crazy this is going to be. And so the players who stand out in this game are going to etch themselves into some emotional part of Pochettino's psyche. So big chance for the coach, big chance for the team as a whole, but also a huge opportunity for some of these players. I'm looking at fullbacks with Anthony Robinson and Serginho Dest out. I'm looking at midfielders with some key midfield pieces out. And of course, center forward and even goalkeeper, if that opportunity presents itself. Just a really terrific opportunity.
It is. And I think when you look at some of these players here, not a lot of them in this roster have actually experienced something like this away in Mexico, because usually it only comes around, in once in a World Cup cycle. So this is a unique experience. And compared to some of the other friendlies that the US have had scheduled and had scheduling issues, because there really hasn't been many nations for them to kind of play against in recent years, because so many other nations were catching up with qualifying for their own continental tournaments or the World Cup. So the US feels like most of their friendlies haven't been this top-tier competitive experience that traveling to Mexico for a regional rivalry kind of allows them to do that and gives them kind of just like a last 16 or a quarterfinal of a World Cup kind of experience and vibe. And again, Mexico has some players out, Nick, but they're very experienced. In comparison to the US, we know how some of that squad, and especially Raul Jimenez, having him back in great form, firing all cylinders, scoring goals for Fulham at the start of the season, that gives them an edge, right? I think compared to the US right now. On home soil, yes, US has had Mexico's number in recent years. We all know that, and it's been great to see that rivalry take a different kind of shape for the US in their favor. But kind of feels to me like Mexico might be the favorites for this one, just given some of the US injury issues and the fact that someone like Jimenez is in the form he's in. And really over the last few years, he hasn't had this kind of form or even been fit whenever the US has played Mexico in these big games.
Yeah, wasn't that little flicked assist he had the other day pretty special?
Incredible.
For Fulham? It's so good to see him back. It's funny because you don't always root for Mexican players because of El Tri, but unique situation. And I think there's the old guard there. If you count him as part of the old guard, if you count Memo Ochoa as part of the old guard, your Guardados, these are just guys that you respect for what they've done and the grit. And it's a little bit like when Michael Bradley scored from distance late in his career against Mexico in Mexico, where it was like, yeah, these are the sort of guys who appreciate the moment. And so this game, it's not going to be the vacation day for anybody. It's not going to be a friendly, even if it is a friendly. So a terrific opportunity. I do think Mexico will have more of the play than they've had against the US in recent years. And Joe, isn't it? I want the US to win. I think on talent they can win, but doesn't it feel like in rivalries like this, no one goes this long without picking up a significant moment? And it feels like Mexico are due.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's been really close games, right? We think about all the Gold Cup and Nations League finals recent year, and US has had the edge, but it's been tight. We all know that both of these nations know how important this game is to their fans, and they're going to leave it all out there. And yeah, it kind of feels like you're right that they're they're owed one a little bit from the football gods. But yeah, US fans everywhere will disagree with that probably.
Oh yeah.
Given the decades of dominance that Mexico
What I'm saying
had.
is I'll take a draw, Joe. I would take a draw.
A draw away in Mexico is always a good result for the US. I think most US fans would agree with that as well. In terms of our predictions and picks, is that what you're going with for this game, Nick?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with 1-1. And I just think those attacking patterns of play that Christian Pulisic is craving, it obviously won't be at its best 2 games into there, but I feel like we're going to see some signs that Poch knows how to do it. And I also think that Mexico may be a little wobbly at the back.
Yeah, I agree with that. On that kind of theme, I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw. I think both teams defensively missing some key players, still getting some. Usually, when a new coach comes in as well, that defensively, that's the kind of the harder thing to sort out in the organization and the structure style of play. Where I think there's a lot of attackers on both teams who will really relish this and showing off. And yeah, I can see this being an open, entertaining game. Of course, being a friendly as well kind of gives you a bit more freedom for that. So I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw between the Mexico and US in Guadalajara. And I think there'll be plenty of positives and negatives for both of these coaches as they, again, this is all preparation, right, for World Cup 2026 on home soil for both of these teams. And I think they'll both be glad to be having a friendly of this stature kind of early in the cycle for that, but just as a reference point for both of these to be like, hey, you remember when we did this? You remember when some of these young guys stepped up and they could be counted in the heat of the battle against our biggest rival? And I'm looking forward to seeing which players step up, because when these friendly windows, there's going to have to be rotation, and there's going to have to be players that maybe you wouldn't expect to play in this game, but where there's surprises, there are opportunities, and a lot of players will take it. I'm sure of that. So really excited to see who does that, both for the US and Mexico moving forward. So head over to Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com for all the latest information on how to watch, analysis, reaction, much more, as Pochettino and the USA, it still sounds cool to say that, Pochettino and the USA head to Mexico for what is a huge friendly. Thanks so much for joining me, Nick. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll speak to you all very soon.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host of NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch more videos all season long. And if you want even more Premier League content, from original series to live matches, head over to Peacock.